Alex Eala just received a life-changing surprise, and it all started with the racket in her hand. $100 million. A single match, a name the world suddenly couldn't stop saying. But here's what nobody is telling you. The real story behind the money, the racket, and the rise of a girl from Quezon City who conquered courts that were never built for someone like her is so much bigger than any headline you've seen on your feed. Because while the internet was busy spreading numbers that didn't exist, the actual truth was quietly becoming one of the most extraordinary stories in the history of Philippine sport. Stay with us, because by the time this video ends, you won't be thinking about $100 million. You'll be thinking about something far more valuable. Before we talk about the money, before we talk about the sponsorships and the viral posts and the headlines that broke the internet, we have to go back to the beginning. Because you cannot understand what Alex Eala means to the Philippines without first understanding what the Philippines means to Alex Eala. She was born on May 23, 2005, in Quezon City, a city of ambition, noise, and dreams stacked on top of dreams. Her mother, Riza Maniego Eala, was not just any woman. She was a former national swimmer who won a bronze medal at the 1985 Southeast Asian Games. Her father, Mike Eala, was a businessman with the kind of quiet drive that tends to raise extraordinary children. From the very beginning, excellence wasn't a pressure in the Eala household, it was a language. Tennis found Alex early, and when it did, the family made a decision that most Filipino families could never afford to make. At just 13 years old, Alex Eala was sent to Mallorca, Spain, to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy. Yes, that Rafa Nadal Academy, the same facility that shaped the greatest clay court player the world has ever seen. Alex didn't just attend, she stayed, she trained, she competed, she earned the respect of every coach who watched her. Tony Nadal, the inaugural director of the academy, Rafael's own uncle, would later say publicly, "For the academy, and for me in particular, it's a huge success. She's the girl who's been with us the longest. In all this time, there's never been a single complaint from anyone, neither from her nor from her family." Think about what that means. An uncle of Rafael Nadal complimenting a teenage girl from the Philippines in Mallorca. That is not a small thing. But here's what made the world truly stop and pay attention. At just 17 years old, in September 2022, Alex Eala became the first Filipino in history to win a junior Grand Slam singles title, claiming the U.S. Open girls singles crown. The Philippines had never seen anything like it. She came home a hero, and she was only getting started. Her weapon of choice through all of it? The Babolat Pure Aero 2023, strung with Babolat RPM Blast, a racket from the French sports brand that has been in her hands since the very beginning of her career. Not a Wilson, not a Yonex, Babolat. Remember that name, because it matters more than you think. Now, what if I told you that the racket in her hand wasn't just winning matches, it was quietly building an empire, and that the internet's obsession with fake numbers was actually hiding something far more real? Here is where the story gets complicated, and fascinating, and more than a little bit wild. By early 2025, Alex Eala was no longer just a promising junior champion. She had become something the tennis world hadn't seen in a long time. A wild card who played like a warrior. Ranked at number 140 entering the 2025 Miami Open, Eala received a wild card invitation. Nobody expected fireworks. The Miami Open is a WTA 1000 event, the second tier of women's tennis, just below the Grand Slams. These courts are not built for wild cards. They are built for champions who have earned their place over years and years of grinding. Alex Eala did not get the memo. In the first round, she defeated Yelena Ostapenko, a former French Open champion. The crowd noticed. In the second round, she beat Madison Keys, the reigning Australian Open champion. The world noticed. And then, in a match that made headlines from Manila to Madrid, she walked onto the court against Iga Świątek, the most dominant women's tennis player of her generation, the world number 3, a 4-time French Open champion, a player who had looked almost unbeatable for years. Alex Eala beat her too, in straight sets. She became the first wildcard in history to defeat 3 Grand Slam champions in straight sets at a single WTA event. She became the first Filipino woman to defeat a major champion at tour level in the Open era. And on March 31st, 2025, she entered the WTA Top 100, the first Filipino in history to do so, landing at world number 75. And then, social media did what social media always does. It took something beautiful and set it on fire. Almost immediately after Eala's Miami heroics, posts began flooding Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. One post, published by a page called Tennis Plus, created just months earlier in March 2025, claimed that American sports giant Wilson had offered Alex Eala a staggering $45 million endorsement deal. The post spread like wildfire, racking up over 103,000 likes, 6,700 comments, and 3,100 shares. A fabricated quote was attached to Eala's name, words she never said, feelings she never expressed, a deal she never signed. And here's the cruel irony. The photo used to make the story look credible was stolen from the LinkedIn profile of Joe Duddy, the former president and CEO of Wilson, who had actually resigned just 3 days before the fake post appeared. The post was a complete hoax. Both Rappler and Verifiles, 2 of the Philippines' most respected fact-checking organizations, investigated and confirmed. There was no Wilson deal. There was no quote. There was no $45 million. None of it was real. But the damage, and the desire, was already done. Why would hundreds of thousands of people so desperately want this to be true? And what does it reveal about something much deeper, not just in Philippine sports, but in the relationship between a nation and its heroes? Let's talk about something nobody in the mainstream sports media wants to discuss. The reason the fake Wilson deal spread to over 100,000 reactions wasn't because Filipinos are gullible, it's because they are hungry. And that hunger is completely justified. Think about the infrastructure behind Filipino tennis. In 2025, the entire budget of the Philippine Sports Commission, the government body responsible for funding and developing athletes across every sport in the country, was approximately $23.3 million. $23 million for an entire nation, for every sport, every athlete, every facility. For context, the Ohio State football program alone had a $20 million NIL budget in the same year. One American college football team, one sport, one school. More money than almost the entire Philippine national sports apparatus. Raymond Suarez, who represented the Philippines in the Davis Cup in the 1980s, put it plainly when speaking to Front Office Sports. The problem the athletes have today is the same that we had before. Wala tayo masyadong court, walang equipment, walang sponsor. There weren't many courts, equipment, or sponsors. You have to rely on your own private family sponsorship. Alex Eala grew up knowing this reality. Her family had the means to support her international tennis journey, flights to Spain, training fees at the Nadal Academy, coaching, equipment, tournament travel across 3 continents. Most Filipino families simply cannot do this, and every Filipino who has ever had a dream that outgrew their resources knows exactly what that feels like. So when a fake post claimed that a $45 million deal had landed in the hands of a 20-year-old girl from Quezon City, a girl who represented every Filipino kid told their dream was too expensive, of course it spread. Of course people shared it without checking. Of course the comments were full of pride and tears and championing emojis. Because the fake story wasn't really about Wilson. It was about validation. It was about the world finally saying, yes, you belong here. Yes, you are worth that much. Yes, Southeast Asia can produce a global superstar. And here is where it gets deeply interesting, because the real story of Alex Eala's actual endorsement portfolio, the verified one, the authentic one, tells that story just as powerfully, without a single dollar of fabrication. Her real sponsors, her real deals, her real value. What does the actual picture look like, and why is nobody talking about how incredible it already is? Let's set the record straight on exactly who Alex Eala is in the commercial world, because the reality is already remarkable enough to take your breath away. Her first endorsement deal came when she was 8 years old. 8. Globe Telecom, one of the Philippines' largest and most influential telecommunications companies, signed her as a brand ambassador before she had won a single professional title, before she had played a single WTA match, before the world knew her name. Globe saw something in a little girl with a tennis racket, and they bet on her future. That relationship has lasted over 12 years and is still active today. Her racket sponsor, Babolat, is not a budget brand. It is the oldest tennis company in the world, founded in Lyon, France in 1875. Its pure aero line, the Racket Eala uses, is the same frame family that Rafael Nadal made legendary. When Babolat puts their name on an athlete, they are making a statement about that athlete's quality, their longevity, and their global potential. Alex Eala has carried that statement since her junior career. Nike. Let that sink in for a moment. Nike, the most powerful sportswear brand on the planet, has been sponsoring Alex Eala for over 5 years and considers her one of their rising global stars. For her Wimbledon debut in July 2025, Nike didn't just give her standard gear. They gifted her a custom hair tie designed in the form of a sampaguita blossom, the national flower of the Philippines. A small gesture, an enormous symbol. This wasn't marketing. This was Nike saying, we see exactly who you are, where you come from, and we want the world to see it too. The Bank of the Philippine Islands, BPI, signed her as an endorser in 2022, positioning her as a symbol of discipline and financial literacy for young Filipinos. In July 2025, she added Locally Juice to her portfolio, a Filipino brand that reflects her connection to her roots even as her stardom grows global. And then there is the prize money story, which is breathtaking on its own terms. Before the 2025 Miami Open, Eala had accumulated approximately $498,901 in career prize money. After that one single tournament, that one magical week where she toppled 3 Grand Slam champions, she collected an additional $332,160. Her career total surged past $830,000 in a matter of days. By early 2026, with a career-high WTA ranking of world number 31, she had crossed into territory no Filipino athlete had ever reached before. By any honest measure, Alex Eala is already one of the most commercially successful Filipino athletes in history. The brands surrounding her, Nike, Babolat, Globe, BPI, Locally, represent a combined global value that no fabricated Wilson headline could ever match. And unlike the fake $45 million, every single dollar of this is real. But here's the question that nobody is asking. If the real story is this good, why did the fake story travel faster? And what does that mean for the next generation of athletes who look up to Alex Eala? There's a darker chapter inside this story that deserves to be told. The Wilson hoax was not the only fake story that tried to attach itself to Alex Eala's name. According to verified fact checks from Verifiles and the Asian Journal, a whole ecosystem of misinformation has grown around her. Rumors circulated claiming she had switched her racket to a Yonex model engraved with the words, Philippine Icon. False. She remains under contract with Babolat. Social media posts claim she had secured an Emirates Airlines sponsorship deal. Also false, flagged immediately as fake with no official announcement ever made. On July 7, 2025, a post claiming Eala had donated 3.9 million Philippine pesos to homeless families in Quezon City after winning a tournament was debunked by Rappler. The story was fabricated. The kindness attributed to her was not real, at least not in the form described. Why does this keep happening? The Asian Journal offered a thoughtful analysis. Misinformation flourishes around Eala because of the prestige of global brands, the allure of exaggerated figures, and the extraordinary pride Filipinos feel in seeing one of their own linked to international recognition. In a fast-moving social media environment, unverified claims often spread faster than the steady confirmation of real deals, and gaps in coverage of sponsorship contracts leave room for falsehoods to circulate before they are corrected. But there is something more uncomfortable underneath all of this that we need to name directly. Fake news about athlete endorsements isn't just harmless excitement. It sets impossible standards. It trains audiences to expect numbers that don't reflect reality, and then feel disappointment when reality arrives. It also, paradoxically, undermines the genuine achievements of the athlete at the center of it all. When your real story keeps getting buried under fake versions of your story, something precious is lost. Alex Eala became a WTA Top 100 player at 20 years old. She became the first Filipino to ever win a junior Grand Slam singles title. She trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy for years and graduated with the full endorsement of Tony Nadal himself. She defeated Iga Świątek in straight sets as a wild card. She represented her country at the SEA Games, the Asian Games, and the French Open. She reached a career-high ranking of world number 31 by February 2026. None of that required a $45 million Wilson deal. None of that required a fake quote. None of that required a fabricated headline. It only required the racket in her hand, the fire in her chest, and the years of quiet work that nobody filmed. So what does the future look like? Where does a girl who has already rewritten history go from here? And what responsibility does she carry for the millions of kids watching her every match? Alex Eala's story is not a story about sponsorship numbers or viral posts or fake Wilson deals. It is a story about what happens when extraordinary talent meets extraordinary will and refuses to let geography, funding gaps, or national history become an excuse. She picked up a racket. She boarded a plane to Spain at 13. She stayed. She won. She came home. She went back out. She won again. The fake headlines about her will keep coming because greatness attracts noise. But the real story, the Babolat racket, the Nike Sambaguita, the top 100 ranking, the Świątek scalp in Miami, the world number 31, that story is already written, and no one can fake it away. If Alex Eala wins a Grand Slam title in the next 3 years, and right now that is not a fantasy, that is a genuine possibility, which brand do you think will offer her the biggest deal in the history of Asian women's tennis? And do you think the Philippines will finally build the tennis infrastructure she deserves?